Hi everyone and welcome to lesson 5 of the Floristry School. I hope you've been doing lots and lots of practice because I've been doing lots and lots of research and lots of prep myself so that when you came back we could continue on. Now in lesson 4 I showed you all how to make a buttonhole. So this time I've made a buttonhole using little wee obsidians, or they could be little Singapore orchids, and I've used a lovely Frangipani, a little bit of fern, and then I've just used at the back here just the top little tip of the orchid. Now I have done these in artificial, and the reason I've done this is because we are from now on going to refer back to all of the things that we've been through in fresh, because that will be a really good prompt and will be a memory to take you on to the next things, lot of work that we're going to do. So there was the buttonhole, beautiful buttonhole for a man, which is nice and light, doesn't have too much in it, and of course because I've used the tropical flowers, I'm just imagining that this would be for a girl that was getting married in the tropics. So that's the other thing that you have to bear in mind. The seasons, as I said in lesson 4, what season it is, what occasion it is, and what flowers are going to be best, and also what flowers will last. So that's your buttonhole. So from the buttonhole we then went on to the corsage. Now the corsage is just ever so much bigger. I've used the same flowers as well, and what I like to do when I'm doing a bouquet is whatever the bride has in her bouquet, I then will use those main flowers. I also like to keep them quite generic in colour, or quite monotonal. Not that that's monotonal, but yes it is. Shades, tones and tints of white with a bit of yellow in it. I like all the buttonholes and the corsage to all be the same, and for the maid or the bride to have the colour. Because sometimes when it comes to doing photographs and you've got everybody wearing everything, it can just be like a whole sea of colour, or a rainbow of colour that can be quite off-putting in a visual photograph at the end of the day. So what that there, going back to the buttonhole, there's your buttonhole and there's your corsage, and it's just ever so much longer. Now before we go any further, the reason I'm doing this is because today's class is all about floral crowns or garlands, which are all starting to make their way back into a fashion trend. So from the buttonhole to the corsage, I'll just put that to side because I'm going to show you how to do something with that in a minute. And then we go into the garland of flowers, or the floral crown. And you'll see that I've used the same flowers in the corsages and buttonholes as I have in the crown. And these are so easy to make once you know how to put it all together. But basically, just to keep this all really, really simple, a buttonhole goes into a corsage, and the corsage then goes into the garland, and that garland also would go into the formations for a trailing or a shower bouquet, which we will cover probably in lesson 6. So let us get started, and I want to show you today all of the different things that you can do with body flowers, which are these. So is the garland, whether it's going to be the whole garland that goes round, or the whole crown that goes round, whether it's just going to be something that sits at the top of the head, or something where the hair is pulled back and the flowers are in there, or even if they've got buns like myself, you could just put the flowers all in and around that. So really, really simple. Okay, so because I'm introducing a new flower today, and that is the Frangipani, there's a specific way of wiring these. Now, if you've ever touched them, you'll understand what I'm talking about. You can't actually, because they're so delicate, you can't actually put the wire through the calyx like we've done with a lot of flowers. This, and I also showed you in lesson 3, I think it was, when we were doing the wiring techniques, how to do mounting, and also to use the mossing. Now with this here, what I'm going to do is just get a little bit of wet cotton wool. That gets wrapped around there like so, and then that gets turned over there just to keep you all up to speed. You don't want that to be too big, and you actually don't have to use it wet at this stage, because once you've finished it and it's been inserted into the flower, you can mist it then. Okay, so from there, very, very gently holding your Frangipani, getting your wire, and it's just a matter of poking that through there so that it comes out the other end, and then just gently, gently pull that down and into there as far as you can without damaging the base of the flower. I've left that sticking up just a little bit more than I would have, just so that I can show you what it looks like, but normally I would take that right back in. Now, the amount of mossing or cotton wool that you use will depend on how fine, how small the flower is to how big the flower is, and how hot the environment is. Now from there, if you wanted to, you can tape that, but look, to be perfectly honest, that there is going to be so delicate in a fresh flower that you're best to just leave it. Things like stephanotis that are a little bit firmer, you can get away with it, and the same with gardenias. But about there, I know that that little wire is jammed in there quite firmly, and that will be very safe and secure. Right, let us begin. Now here I've got the corsage that we did in lesson 3, and I've got another one over here, and I just want to recap and start again. Now I've got everything that we're going to use today. I've also wired, it's all been taped, it's all been mossed, it's all into little jars so that it's ready to go, because you don't, once you get into it, you don't really want to be stopping and starting. Okay, so for the corsage here, I just put these together so that I knew where I was going. Now that's the other thing I wanted to show you. Now with this here, the reason when I've done this, I actually haven't put any cotton on it, and when you pull that into there, I don't know whether that's going to be safe or whether it's going to pull through. And also I can see a little bit of that wire, not really what you want to be having with something that's going to be worn and people will be able to see it. So do make sure that you do cover that little bit of wire. Okay, so I've got for the corsage, and I want to make this exactly the same because there is a cunning plan here. Right, so I've got a little bit of fern. Any kind of fern would do, but I quite like it when it's got a little bit of movement with it. I've also got a Singapore orchid. I'm going to call it a Singapore orchid because it is artificial. So I've just got the little bud there, the little buds there, and the little floret that's just starting to open. Now that there's all wired, and I'm just going to put that on top of that like that. And to turn that around, that is going to move. Try and not twist the stems, because as I said in lesson 4, if you twist the stems, that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's very, very unflattering. Okay, I've got another little orchid there, which I'm going to put, and you'll notice that I'm holding everything all in one hand, and then I'm going to put that little one just into there like so. And remember how I talked about the steps down, and if you're a bit stuck, just look at what nature does, and nature normally places things perfectly so that as they grow and open, there's room for each little floret to open. So that's always something good to look forward to, to bear in mind. Now the other thing I didn't show you last week was sometimes you can use a guide wire instead of taping, and a guide wire is just a bit of wire that goes around there like that, and pull that quite firmly so that now holds everything together. And that little stem there, just bring that little stem down like that, and now you've got lovely guide wire, and you would be using the finest. This is about a 24 gauge. Normally I would use probably a 26 or a 30. It's not going to do anything except be a mechanical aid to what I want to do. Right, from there I need to put another piece of fern up the back, and then I'm going to put another little piece there, and then use my guide wire again to just gently just pull that around there and keep that all nice and firm. Now I've got the 3 lovely Frangipani, so I'm going to put one there, then I'm going to bring another one into there, and then I'll bring another one into there like so. And then if they need a bit of room, just put your finger down there, get your guide wire again, and just bring that around and gently just pull that together. I've got a couple of leaves, so I'm going to put another leaf up there just for a bit of support, and then I'll bring another leaf down into there so that I've got added support, and then just give that another. It's much, much easier using the guide wire, and I should have shown you that in the first lesson, but I wasn't quite thinking. Now that has come off there, and if that happens at this stage, get rid of it. And the other thing is, because you didn't wire that, twist it round, it's now an easy process of just pulling the whole thing out and then just putting that in there again. Take that around there like that, and then I've got a nice leaf, so I'm just going to put that leaf underneath there like so, so that there's a little bit of green just supporting that last flower that I put into there. Twist that around there like so, and then getting your scissors, clip that across there, and then you can just bring that wire down. Now to gauge to how long that should be, you need it so that you've got a little bit to just be pinning on. And remember that in lesson 4 I said that the corsage should be placed so that it's on the top seam or the shoulder seam, which is going to give you a little bit more support and it's not going to drag on the fabric. Right from there, just get your tape and just tape that around and down like so. Now, that is the beginning of your garland. Now let's just have a look at this. This is a little bit wider. I don't want this to be too wide because it's going to be worn on the hair, but it's exactly the same process. So we won't get into that yet, because what I do want to do is show you how to do something that's going to go into the hair. Right, getting rid of all of that there, and I didn't quite finish that off. That there's just a little bit too long. I would probably cut that to there, but I am going to use this for another something. Right, here we are with the guide wire with the other one I've done. I'll just give that another good tug like so, and I'm going to cut those off. And now this time for this side, I'm going to leave that just for a minute because I've got something really quick and easy that I want to show you how to do for head flowers. Right, taping that down to there, and when I'm looking into this, I'm looking at that big thick bit there, which I find very unattractive, as opposed to that stem there. So can you see that? There is a little bit of thickness there, because don't forget that as I've wired the flowers, that there where it's been affixed, I've had to leave a good centimetre of stem length, and so that I could wire onto the flower, plus I've had to tape it. So it's always going to have that little thick bit there, but the least amount of twisting you do, the better it's going to be, because that will keep that nice and fine. Right, now if a girl wanted to have flowers that she wore in her hair, this corsage shape is absolutely perfect, and that just would be bent up and that would just get pushed into the hair like so. Easy, easy. So so when you think about how things are made, and it might sound like I'm going over and over and over things, but to know about the buttonhole and how that's constructed, which is your very first way of approaching any kind of thing for a wedding, I always do those first, then into the corsage, and to know that a corsage, if anybody said to you, I want flowers in my side here, you just know now that it's just actually a corsage, either bigger or thicker. Now if you wanted to put that into a comb, of which I think I have to say I'd be hesitant about using one of these for going into the hair, because over the years what I've found is that this will actually slip. So to get around that, what I do is, when I'm constructing my corsage, I use what I call my little pins, and it's just a piece of wire with just a little loop over there that can be taped to just hold it together like so. And then when you're constructing, you can actually insert that in through whatever you're making at the same time, so that that would actually be at the base, so that when the hairdresser goes to insert this into the hair, all she has to do is pull that out, and as the designer you can just say to the girls when you're delivering the flowers, for the headgear I've put little lips in there. I don't know how many thank yous I've had from hairdressers over the years when they've said that was such a good idea, Astar. So and you could put one there, perhaps one in there, and then maybe you could have one coming out here. Now the other thing in making this hair as fine as you can, that will allow a hairdresser to actually wedge pins, bobby pins into that, to actually keep it in the hair. The other thing is, don't forget that because it's going to be worn in the head, it has to be as light as possible. So that's that out of the road. So that's one for in the hair. Now what say the bride wanted to have something like like a beautiful crown across the top of her head. Easy peasy, depending on how big you want it. And as a general rule of thumb, when I'm interviewing the brides, I can usually tell what size she's going to be, and this isn't really a very nice, well, I'm going to say it anyway. I've found that the bigger the personality, the bigger the flowers that you can get away with. So, you know, bear that in mind. Okay, so if you want something to go at the top of the head, it's just a matter of getting both, keeping that guide wire there. You can use another one if you wanted to. And that stem there, just very gently, just pushes into there. With that guide wire, it's just a matter of pulling that around like so, until you hit, and then just bend that and bring that out until you've got the length that you want. I'll leave that on there for a moment, and then with those, using those same little wee eyelets like I've done there, as you're constructing that, construct those into it, and then that, get rid of that wire, will just stick up into there, and you might need to bend it down, but I never ever bend. I always tell the hairdresser or whoever's doing the hair that that's what they should do. Just slowly, once the hair's done, when you go to put it into the hair, pinning it, and then pinning it up through there, and then just gently just bringing those bits down so that it hits the contour or the correct contour of what the hair is going to be like. Now, you can, if you want to, for something like this, use the comb, and to do that it's just a matter of mounting it onto there, but make sure that you get this plate going the right way. Are you going to have it going that way, or are you going to have it going into the hair that way? So it will depend on whichever way the hairdresser wants to do it, but placing that on there like that, gently putting your hand into there, and then what I do, and I know it's a bit rough and agricultural, but I prefer to just get the wire and then put the wire through like so, and then fix that in a crisscross, so you go to that way and maybe to that way, and if you needed to, you can go into here and get another piece of wire and just fix it onto there. That makes for something that's really sturdy and strong, and usually with the veil that will come with it. So you could just use the wire, or dental floss is also a really good thing, and you could use the dental floss to actually sew that onto the clip or the clasp or the comb onto the veil. So there you have it. Easy peasy so far, I believe. Right, let's start the garland, and then let's look at finishing it. Let's have a little wee break for a moment so that you can absorb that, and then we will move on. Okay, welcome back. To do the garland or the floral crown, how long to make it? This wire I buy on a spool, and this is what I use as my gauge, and I add a couple of centimetres at the beginning, and I have a couple of centimetres extra at the edge. What I do when the girls come, or I go to see the girls for the consultation, I always get a piece of wire and I put it around the head, and as I said, I add a couple of centimetres at the top and a couple of centimetres at the end, which will all make sense in due course. The other thing that you have to determine is, are they going to have it that's going to go this way, or is it going to go this way? Because the measurements for this way is going to be less than the measurements for this way. Also remember, if it's for a little girl, make sure that it's not too big and it's not too heavy. And as I said in lesson 4, make sure you don't use the heavy wires. You keep everything as lightweight as you can, because wearing something with all of those flowers on the head can be very draining after half to 3/4 of an hour. So the lighter it is, the better it's going to be. Okay, with my length here, and what I usually do is I just put that onto a piece of card, and if it's for Stephanie, I'll fix that onto the card and put Stephanie's name, etc., just for ease, just so that you're not actually having to, which is which, and then make sure that that little tag goes onto the completed item so that Stephanie, the hairdresser, or whoever's doing the hairdressing, knows who it is. Okay, so with your long piece of wire, this is also now going to become your gauge for how long you're going to make it. As I said, a couple of centimetres at the front at the beginning and a couple of centimetres at the end. Right, so what I do is you can either leave that like that and you can do a little twist. In fact, hold on, just leave that there for a minute and I'll show you on this darker wire. Okay, this is how sometimes I do it. Sometimes I'll just turn over that centimetre and I'll just fix that like I did with the little eyelet hole, so that when the thing is finished, that then would just clip into there like that. That's a nice easy way of doing it, but sometimes if they're not positioned properly, that will pull out. So that's one way of doing it. But the way that I like to do it, or have been doing it just at the moment, is so that I get a really good firm closure, is leave that long guide wire as it is. Right, and I've also laid, as I said, everything's been all wired. Normally I would keep it in little bottles like this so that everything's in the order of which I'm going to use them in front of me, so that I don't have to stop and start. But for ease of today, so that you can see where I'm going, I've just laid everything out the way that I'm going to use it. Okay, I'm going to start off with a little bit of fern, and I'm going to place that onto there, and this is where the taping comes in. Even though you have already taped, I don't like, when it does that, that means that it's not very good tape. So discard that to start with. Okay, so oh, it's done it again. Don't you hate it when that happens? Oh, this might continue. If this does it one more time, I've got the wrong tape when I was doing it. Okay, get that and pull that out. And I know that it's going to break again because it's just a little bit too hard. So I'm going to get rid of that right at this stage so that I don't have any problems, and use that because I know that that works. Okay, I've done a little bit more taping than I would normally do. Normally I would just do a couple of centimetres, but that will do. Right, from there I'm then going to put a leaf underneath that like so, and then tape it again. So I've actually come down, that's a good couple of centimetres with the leaf, with the first one that I put. And don't forget, don't lose that bit there, because that's going to come in handy at the end. Right, that can go to there, and then tape again, just about a centimetre. Right, from there, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little orchid, and that's going to go on top of that like that. And then I want to use a Frangipani, so that's going to go to there like so, exactly the same as when we were doing our buttonhole. Actually, I don't want to go that way, I want to go that way, so I'll put those in the position so that I don't have to muck around. That is going to go into there like so, and that's going to fill that out. Right, the next thing I want to do is to put another leaf under that, exactly the same as for the buttonhole, holding it in my hand, and then tape all of that together and come down a couple of centimetres. Now, as I'm starting to work through, this here is starting to get quite thick, and there is my guide wire, if you can see it. I'm now going to, this is what I like to do, clip into there and get rid of some of those wires, so that as I go down, I'm never ever going to get, because you imagine if I hadn't done that with this here, I'd get to the end with it and have a big long stem. Right, the next thing to do is to put in another piece of fern, and I like to place my foliage and my forms and my flowers as if I was what am I thinking of here? As if I was plaiting here. So one to the middle, one to the left, one to the right, one to the middle with that leaf, one to the left, one to the right. Now I've gone one to the left again, pull those down, tape that again, and also bear in mind that even though a little piece of tape, I'll show it with this bit that's not very good, that little bit of tape really doesn't weigh very much, stretched out, doesn't really weigh very much, but when you hold that, collectively all of that tape actually weighs at the end of the day when you're finished. So don't use too much of it when you're doing it. Okay, now where was I? Because I talked. Right, let's bring one of those in. So I'm going to put that into there. So that's just now going to lay in through that little space there. So just push that into there. And as I said, I can't get away with those thick bits there only because of the centimetre that I've used to wire and then I've taped it. So there's always going to be that wee thick bit there anyway. So it's just something to bear in mind. Just get rid of as much weight and as bulk as you can. Okay, another leaf can go under there like so, but I'm trying when I'm placing not to put that big thick bit there on top of another big thick bit there. So just bring that down ever so slightly. And in a moment, I'll turn it over and I'll show you what I mean by the leaf, putting the one to the left, one to the right. Now, that there is actually going to be what's going to form it's going to be closest to the head. Now, those leaves there, I always use ivy or little camellia leaves or something or the ruscus, which is quite sort of a firm leaf structure, because I know that that's not going to disintegrate and it's going to actually be like the backing or like a protection between the hair and the flowers. Okay, so that just goes to there. Then I've got a little piece of maidenhair fern. I'm going to tuck that into there. Now the reason I'm tucking that into there is because I know that that's quite delicate, and I also know that that could be damaged quite quickly. Still holding it in my hand, and then just do the taping again, and I'm just sort of taking it down ever so slightly now. Okay, so I've got more wires than I actually possibly need here, so I'll just cut those off, and that's quite a bit of weight that I've already cut out of there. Then going back to the beginning, put that little flower into there. Oops, that's too small. Put that one into there. And when you're doing your wires, you just cut them so that you've got half the length of the wire, because you don't, it's all going to be just disintegrate, just go into the bin anyway. So take that off at this stage. Okay, so that little orchid went to the right. So this time I'm going to bring that into the left. And then another piece of Frangipani on top of that, like so. I now need to bring in another piece of fern, which I'm going to put on top of there like that. And then I'm going to tape that again. Taping will be your very, very best friend. Taking that down a couple of centimetres. And the tape also will stick and bind to itself so it won't slip. Then another leaf can go into there. But whereas I put that leaf went to the left last time, I'm now going to bring that slightly to the right so that I'm evenly distributing the weight of those backing leaves interspersed with the fern, like so. And then give that, and you can see also that I've left another couple of centimetres in there. I'll tape that. So how easy is this? It's just going to be not as fat as a corsage, but it's still a corsage, or it started off as a buttonhole in its life. And then it's exactly the same process. So that went to the left last time. So this time, let's bring that into there, so that it actually forms that nice plait. And the reason I do that is because when it's on the head, you'll have some at the top and some at the bottom. And we will get into more sort of like what I call informal. This is very, very formal placing in due course as we go through the lessons, where you can use a multitude of flowers, where the issue then is distributing the right amount of visual weights. Okay, so you just keep going, removing wires as you go so that you don't have that extra bulk in there. Right, let's just have a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back to actually finishing it, and that will possibly be almost the end of lesson 5. See you in a minute. Right, we're almost at the end, and I know we're almost at the end because that is all the wire I've got to work with. The other little tip I should have given you, when you do your guide wire, around the head. The other thing that I do is I also do a measurement, so that I've actually got the measurements exact on a piece of paper on the back of, let's say this is for Stephanie, so that's on the back of it. Okay, I know I'm nearly at the end of it because I've nearly reached the end of it, and I'll just do a little test for me. There's my little bit of wire there. Let's just put that to there, and hey presto, look at that, or to the end. Perfect. Now I do need you to know that when you get to the end here, you're fine with your taping and wiring at this stage. When you get to about there, you then are going to have to put it down onto the bench, and the best way to wire is to actually have the whole thing on the bench like so, and then just, oops, I just want to wire that wee bit onto there, and then you're going to have to do it like that, and you'll notice that it's twisting, and that drives me insane when it starts to twist like that. But there's nothing I can do about that apart from to just get in there every now and again and just twist that back. So you just keep twist that, and it is a little bit fiddly. You'll understand when you get to there because it does twist, and it sort of feels like it's sort of like unmanageable. Right, to put this thing together, it's just a matter of going to the end where that little guide wire was there it is, and then bringing that around to there like so, and then just pulling that out like that. Now I know that that is going to be too small, and I will show you. So usually it's placed on the hair like that, right? So it's okay, but when I have placed, when I bring that into there like that, that should be twisted across there. Now, as what's now happening is I don't have any flowers in there. So what I will do is I'm just going to bulk that up so that they know which is the back with an extra couple of flowers, and I'll just tape that into there like that, because I actually need, the secret here is I actually need, this is what I mean, it's going to drive you crazy and you'll be saying to yourself, can I be bothered doing that? But look, if you want to be a professional florist, these are the things that you need to know. So I'm just going to take that down ever so much longer. So maybe I'm leaving into adding here another couple of centimeters. Right, so then get rid of that there. Then that can go to there, much better because I've got that filled in. And then with those little bits of wire there, just take those and twist those back onto itself. And where I've got, can you see there, see where that little thick bit there is? That's when those little thick bits come in handy. That there has got several stems, it's been taped several times, and I know that that is a strength part of the construction in there. And with that other little bit there, just pull those flowers back, and then just twist that around there, and make sure where that is twisted through there that the wire that may be exposed is pushed into the body of that main stem there, so that when that goes on the head, it's not going to be it's not going to poke into the head. And then it's just a matter of, once you've got it finished, just going around and then just giving it just a little bit of, and just fixing each little bit out or pulling each little flower out until you've got that to the shape that you want it. So there you have, let me just get rid of all of this, a buttonhole which goes into a corsage that can go onto, that is a crown to me. And when I hear people saying that these are floral crowns, I think to myself, no it's not, that is a crown, because that's what the Queen would wear, and that is a garland of flowers. Now this whole process that we've just done now also works for a traditional laurel wreath like they would wear if you were racing cars, or for horses, or if you were for Anzac Day or somewhere where you wanted to put a memorial wreath down it, but that's for another day. So there we have it. Now the other thing I wanted to tell you is that from that garland shape, that there is the beginning, as I said, of a trailing bouquet, which we will get into in lesson 6. The other things, we'll just have a wee break for a minute because I've just remembered something else that I think is quite valuable in knowing how to do one of those. So give me a wee minute. Welcome back. Now, I want to show you what else you can do with that garland. Often the girls will say, oh, and can you provide flowers from the cake? Now I am going to do that another day, but while I've got the garland, I might as well show you here. Right, cake stand. This is going to be the best makeshift wedding cake you've ever seen. Cake onto there, cake bottom. Well, it's white, and then there could be the second tier there. And depending on how many tiers will be depending on how far you take the flowers. Right, taking this apart, where's my bit here? With that little bit there, often they will say they want a circlet or a garland of flowers around the cake. When you're doing it, to make sure you get it the right length, because the head's never going to be as big as the circumference of a cake stand or a cake plate, but don't trust the bride. You get the name of the cake designer yourself and you ring and you ask the exact measurements of around that cake and do it to that measurement. And then normally what I do is with that stem bit that's there, cut that bit off and I actually poke that into the cake, because just trust me, it's easy to do that, or just to use pins to place it in, but then that could also go around there. Often I'm asked to do like a garland that goes right around the cake. Well, it's exactly the same process, so that could wind down from the top. The other thing is these little buttonholey things here. Sometimes if you're stuck and you just don't know what to do, just make several little buttonholes and then just stick those into the side. Make 2 would do. So you'd have one looking this way and the other one looking that way, and then just tape those together. And I use like a knitting needle, put a hole into the cake and then just push that into there. So you'd have one at the front and one at the back, and just position your flowers so that you can see all around. The other thing that you can sometimes do is make several of these and have the 2 at the top, and then you could perhaps have 2 there and then perhaps have a couple there, one there, one there and one there, and exactly the same process that just pushes into there. So there you have garlands, buttonhole, corsage, a head crown and a garland. Now there is one more thing that I want to show you, and this will just take me but a moment to set up. For very, very, very little girls, here's an easy way of doing it. And I absolutely love this. You could get one of these headbands and you could just glue flowers over the top of that, or for something that's very plain like this, you could just get that and you could tape or wire that onto there, so that when that goes into the hair, it's just going to sit like that. But I'd have something else on that other side too, because that's looking all a bit naff. But normally it's done so that the little fine flowers come down the face. And if you're wanting to lengthen something, the best way I've found is to just use a little bit of something that does actually naturally drop anyway in the foliage line, like a bit of asparagus fern or some kind of crepe or whatever, or even I have used it in the past, and that is stephanotis, and just wide the stephanotis in so that it actually just drops naturally down. But you're still faced with, if that girl wearing it isn't careful, then the flowers can knock off. So as long as you can trust them, you can get away without wiring. Now the other way is getting your glue gun and either using some little lace ribbon like this, which I really love because the spacing's already done for you. You don't have to think too hard about it. Or you can get a long piece of ribbon, like so, and I've just remembered something else that I'm going to share with you before we go in at the end anyway. Okay, so get your long ribbon about this length, put that around the little girl, going to the middle, put that around the middle, and then just put that around the head like so. Make a mark on either side where it's going to tie off so that you know how far to put the flowers. Lay that down there. There's my little middle mark there. And this way I would work, if I was doing this, I would actually work from the middle out. And I've got all of these little rosebuds here that we could use, and I've got some leaves, and in this method, starting at the middle, little bit of glue, there's my middle mark there, place that onto there like that, and then work the other way like so, just leaving a little bit of space. You can get the low melt glue, and if you wanted to, you could, and I'm just going to put that on the top of there like that, using the low melt glue, you could just use that to just fix the flowers directly onto here, and I just think that that'll be long enough. And if the glue's not too hot, then it won't, and because that's a nice cotton tape anyway, it's not going to show through. So from there, and then I've got a couple of little buds. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from this end. Oh no, I won't. I'm going to go from the middle, do it properly as I intended it to be. That can just be glued onto there. You've got to make sure that you don't have too much. You don't want to have too much. In fact, you don't want any stem on there at all, because you want this to be sitting quite flat on the head. Put another one into there. Please, God, make me have another one. I have. That can go onto there like that. Now, when you're placing them, make sure that you've got equal distance between all of them. A little bit of that can just go into there. Get another one, evenly distributing your weight, as I said, because I'm fussy and I can't stand it when it doesn't match. And then getting little bits of something fluffy like this, putting a little bit of glue onto there, and then just go on either side like we did when we did the very beginning. But because it's for a little girl, about now you have to just stop and think about it. Is it going to be too wide? This is a little smaller bit, so I'm just going to bring that down and into there like so, and this is pretty much the easiest garland. And here I have, I've just spent the last 45 minutes showing you all the how to, and then I'm showing you now my tricky cheaty bits. But make sure, as I said, make sure that they have been stuck on there quite firmly. And I've got a couple of little buds now, so I'm just going to put that onto there like that. And where's my glue gone? There it is. And then we'll just put this little one onto here like so, and fixing the flowers onto the leaf is actually going to be much stronger. Now, and the other thing is, when you're looking at it, just make sure that it is perfectly balanced. And when I look into this, I've got all this weight here, and I don't mind that, but I've got this area over the back here that's not got much happening in it, so just push that into there, and I'm going to just put another one into there like so, just so that I know that that weight has been visually balanced out. And if you're still a little bit concerned, as I am right about now, because I'm seeing that colour there and I haven't diffused it in any other way, I'm just going to quickly do this here, just so that I'm satisfied, because I am fussy. And when you look at that there, with that little bit in there, as opposed to nothing down there, I've got this bright colour in here and it's not being diffused. So that's why when you're doing it, You just have to make sure that you've got it right. So there you have it. Leave that to just stay there for just a few minutes, but that is an easier way of doing it. And then finally, the very last way is to get a piece of elastic to the length or the circumference or the right measurements for the head, and then just glue your little flowers on there. But as I said, the flowers have got to be rounded and flat, because if they're not, they're going to stick up, and I actually don't like seeing that bit of the rose. I prefer it when it's flat like that. But there you have it, and when you turn it over, everything's all nice and firm and fixed, and it's not going to come off. And then that's just a matter of just tying that at the back of the head, and then just doing a little knot down there. And you can have these, or a nice bow, you can have those little trails, and it always looks so cute on a little girl with the little bits all hanging down. So there you have it. Easy ways of doing body flowers. I have so enjoyed showing you this craft. I learned how to do this 45 years ago. It was one of the first things I did, and I've been making them for years, and I still love it. Hope you've enjoyed today's lesson, and I'll see you in lesson 6, and we're going to do a wired posy, and then we're going to take that into a showered posy or a drop posy, which is so worth learning how to make, because the trends of the frocks coming through are all like that. Hope you've enjoyed this, and because I've enjoyed being with you today, and I will see you another day. Keep me posted with any problems.